Like, I hope a miracle happens, you know what I'm saying? I hope it's, all I wish is to free my father from up under this enslavement and spare his life.
What would you say to the Supreme Court if you had the opportunity to testify on behalf of your dad?
I would try to make them see that this is a murder on their behalf, and this is
Yeah.
wrong, you know? And I believe my father is truly innocent, and they need to take a closer look.
Have you allowed yourself to even get to Tuesday right now?
Yeah, I already put it inside my body that I would be a witness to it, to the execution. I'm gonna stand there firm and show my dad he's not alone if this what it comes to, and I'm ready for it. My mindset, my spirit, strong. Like, I'm doing this for my dad. It's bigger than me. So for me to be there in that time, if it comes to that, it's like an honor where I'm gonna see him off. So if this is the way that he going out, we already made peace.
That innocent brother at that, right?
Yesterday, a black man was lynched. Peace, peace, peace. I am Dr. Phillip Roundtree, and you are tuned into Rhetorically Speaking. Man, it's a heavy day. It's a heavy day. Yesterday, we watched Marcellus Williams Sr. be murdered, and make sure we use the correct language. We watched Marcellus Williams be murdered by the state of Missouri, by the U.S. government. It's a heavy day, man. It's a heavy day. But we're going to try to get through it. We're going to try to get through it. We're going to work through it like black folk have always been resilient. We've been forced to be resilient since the beginning of time, especially since we've been here in this settler colony known as America.
Yeah.
As I try to process and understand what took place yesterday and what will happen today and what will happen tomorrow, I am joined by my homegirl, Proof of Consciousness, which is such an apt name in this moment in time. Also goes by P.O.C. How you feeling?
What's good? Good morning. Yep. You already know what time it is, man. Phil, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you again for your patience with me this morning. But I feel like I wish the state of Missouri had some patience with Marcellus, to actually hear um, hundreds of thousands of people's outcry to save this man's life, this innocent man's life. You know what I mean? To be sitting on death row for over 2 decades and for it to come down like this with new evidence to show and to prove that he's continuously innocent. Like you said, Phil, I don't think we're in a new day. I think we're in the same time. It's just, it's revealing itself over and over that devil continues to show up just in new forms as we really show true colors here in America. We're in an election season right now. And I want to know what both candidates have to say about the state of Missouri making this decision. Honestly, truly, I haven't really heard too much about it from either candidate, in my opinion. But I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little later. But I do want to just focus in on the fact that when you think about states like southern states, specifically southern states like Missouri, and them still making the conscious effort to lynch not just black people but in general having this the idea that lynching is still okay in 2024. It's just very telling. It's very telling for a southern state like Missouri.
Agreed, and appreciate those of you who are tuning in on YouTube. If you want to join the show, tinyurl.com/pocket.guest. You can come on the screen. You can offer your thoughts. That also goes for the folk who are watching on Instagram Live and Facebook Live. We definitely want to hear your comments with regards to just the various topics we're talking about today, but
Yeah.
specifically Marcellus Williams. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Marcellus Williams, I had no idea who Marcellus Williams was about a month ago.
Hmm.
Right? He's this brother who this ancestor now, who many may consider a martyr at the expense of the state. Right? He was a brother who was executed yesterday, September 24th, 2024. He was alleged to and convicted for the murder of a former reporter, Felicia Gale, who was stabbed to death in her home. He was arrested and charged in 2001. Now, this is where things start to get extremely murky. There was no physical evidence linking him to the crime. They had testimony from an informant and his ex-girlfriend. This is where it starts to get fuzzy. We start to see ulterior motives. There was a $10,000 reward, and some folk thought that might have played into the ex-girlfriend potentially linking him to the crime. Both of them were considered convicted felons when we're talking about the informant and the ex-girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
He was sentenced to death in 2003. In 2015, 12 years later, being on death row, there was new DNA testing on the murder weapon, on the knife that killed Felicia Gale, and it said it did not match Marcellus Williams.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that would be enough, right? The DNA. We've watched Law and Order. We've watched Dateline. We've watched Snapped. We've watched so many of these shows where it says if there's no DNA match, then what are we doing here? How did we get to this point where he is convicted? Well, we know why. Because 11 of the 12 jurors were white, number one.
Yeah.
As P.O.C just talked about, we're talking about the South and the Midwest. We're talking about red states where a black man is not only just a black man, but black folk in general, or brown folk, let alone, will have a jury of their peers, whatever that means, right? So we know you're guilty until proven innocent in these states. More telling, in 2017, the victim's family called for a stay of execution. Her husband had doubts that he was guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Other family members have doubts that he is guilty. But yet and still at that time, prosecutors pushed forward for the execution despite the new evidence with regards to the DNA. He did receive a stay of execution from former Governor Eric Greitens, who appointed a special board of inquiry. And this is where the ongoing legal battles persisted. Now, recently, you had the governor. I don't even want to say his name.
Yeah.
Right? He looked at the case, right, and said, "Oh, no, we're gonna keep the party going." So he's not going to offer it. He didn't offer a stay of execution. It went to the Missouri Supreme Court. They said, "Nah, we're gonna keep the party going."
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. Supreme Court didn't really offer an opinion formally.
Nor an
You know,
explanation.
the Democratic justices that are in place said, "Yeah, we probably would have said, ask for a stay." Just considering what's taking place. Again, yesterday, a black man, another black man, and it's going to be another one today, tomorrow, and henceforth was executed by the state. So when you learned about this case, P.O.C, what was your initial thoughts, like your visceral reaction to what was taking place?
For me, I love history, right? So when I figured out that this was like a story that was 2 decades old, I started to do my research to figure out how is this man continuously sitting on death row, knowing that he's innocent, and you have all of these new factual evidence coming up throughout the years of him sitting on death row, and no one's giving him grace or no one's giving him the just due that he deserves as an American citizen. So also being being a journalist and being a reporter myself, I wanted to do more digging on Felicia Gale as well, because we also need to protect ourselves. We go out here, we utilize our First Amendment right, and some people don't necessarily agree with us and always understand, why we do our jobs and how we do our jobs and the way that we do our jobs. So when it comes down to, just her end of the spectrum, I wanted to understand a little bit more about that, just to put some context there. But for me, honestly, feel like it was definitely something that was not too shocking, again, because it was in the state of Missouri. And then to know that it went up to the Supreme Court, and in the Supreme Court decision, they literally said that it's a state's decision, and they don't want to get into it. There was a time where Sonia Sotomayor stepped in and asked for a pause. Ketanji Brown Jackson also asked for a pause, but nothing was actually done about it. And I think that there's more that could have been done from a federal standpoint to actually get involved. But the federal government did not want to get involved with Governor Mike Parson, and I think that that is something that we as voters need to truly pay attention to in this upcoming election. Right? Who are we putting in office? Who is making these decisions? Specifically in these red states where Black and brown people live, where Black and brown immigrants are migrating to, and we want to make sure that they have the same level of respect and they're getting the same justice as everyone else. So this case, honestly, truly, I think it's a lesson, and it's a lot of talking points that can come from this, for the next generation of leaders to be able to do something about. Because Phil, I feel like the fact that we're still talking about executions, like literally taking people's lives, um, I don't think no human being should be responsible for that type of justice, in my opinion.
And let's stay there for a minute when you talk about the death penalty, right? I'm an abolitionist at heart. I do believe that the death penalty needs to be off the table for anybody, right? Whether you committed a crime or not, because it's the sheer idea. Number one, who am I to say that somebody's life should be taken,
Yeah.
right? Despite others taking people's lives, it's I that's a lot on me, right? When we talk about from a moral standpoint, but then when we start to look at the how flawed the justice system is, right? And when we say that the justice system is flawed, it's the same idea that when it comes to this idea of government, and why I push back against this, or not push back, why I have questions even when it comes to this idea of governing. And I'm not going to, I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was Ayn Rand. I don't know who, if it was somebody else, but I remember Star. I don't know if you remember Star from Star and Buck Wild, but it's very
No, that's over my
problematic in,
head.
in in certain regards. But I think he attributed this idea to Ayn Rand. It's when it comes to government, right? This idea of government is that people can't govern themselves, right? That people can't govern themselves. They're ungovernable. And
Mhm,
so what you do is you take somebody from this group who's not governable and ask them to govern. It seems contradictory
mhm.
to me, right? Because we're talking about people who have their own paradigms, their own way of thinking, their perceptions on how life are supposed to be, and now it's put onto others, right? And how just conflicting that can be. And when we look at when we relate that to just the justice system and the death penalty specifically, right? We have one person who says whether they're navigating grief.
Yeah.
Now here you have this family who's saying, well, listen, the evidence doesn't support it. Now you have some folk who saying, I don't care if the evidence supports it. I want justice.
Yeah.
And I don't care who has to pay as a result of this. Y'all said he did it, then he did it. It's problematic in itself. Then when
Mhm,
we start to look at since the advent of DNA, and when we look at individuals who've been exonerated since 1970, you've had 190 people exonerated from crimes they were alleged to have commit, who were sitting on death row,
mhm.
who were later released. Now I'm from the school of thought, well, one is too many. And if you have one where it says, well, you know what? Yeah, we know you ain't do it, then that's too many. And so here we have the seed of doubt that's planted, right? And that's all it takes is the seed of doubt. The seed, when we talk, and we got the shows like Reasonable Doubt, right? Because it has to be reasonable doubt that an individual committed a crime
Yeah.
without a shadow of a doubt. And if there is any doubt, then you cannot find that individual guilty. But yet and still, here we have Marcellus Williams and so many other individuals, right? He's just the latest face on this problematic justice system where there's doubt. You don't hear me saying he's innocent. I don't know. Right? I based off with the information, the limited information that I have, yeah, it seems that he would be innocent. But I'm not even talking about innocence. I'm just talking about the difference between life and death.
Yeah.
And so
Because
for
even,
me,
I'm sorry, Phil.
this is again, this highlights the flaws in the justice system. What were you about to say?
I was just gonna just piggyback on what you were saying. I didn't want to cut you off, but even in the conversation specifically about just the stay on the execution, it's not him necessarily saying he wants to be released from prison. It's him saying, please don't execute me, please don't take my life. And we can actually work this out in the justice system as far as going back to court and revisiting everything that it has to offer as far as the new evidence and all the different appeals that he filed. So just knowing that they would not even stay on the execution was something that definitely took a lot of people's, I would say, it was a lot of turn of events for a lot of people, down to the fact where he had about over 100 to 150 people outside protesting, even the hour of him actually being, injected. So I think that that is something big that we also need to pay attention to, is that his attorneys, his team, was his family, his sons, right, him himself was literally asking just to stay on the execution. And the fact that the governor, Minnesota, I said Minnesota, Missouri Supreme Court, nor did the United States Supreme Court feel the need to just stay on the execution. So I think that that's something also that made my eyes big, and as well as others, is the fact that they would not even revisit the case in order to give this man the justice he needed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and when we talk about these stays of execution and what takes place, and there's so many people. You have the Innocence Project, you have the ACL, you have so many organizations, so many grassroots organizations, so many people who are unheralded, right? Who are doing this work, fighting for individuals who are whether wrongfully convicted. I think of Maya Moore,
Yeah.
basketball legend. She might have went down as being the greatest basketball player, one of the greatest athletes, not only women's athletes, but athletes of all time.
Period.
She said, listen, I see what's happening, this injustice taking place with this brother who ended up being her husband later on, but I see what's happening here. And so I'm going to put it all on the line. She didn't have to,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she risked it all for her belief in true justice, in
Mm-hmm.
fairness, and specifically humanity, because that's what we're talking about here. We're
Yeah.
talking about shared humanity amongst one another, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and this is where folk who are abolitionists say this entire thing needs to be thrown away, throw the proverbial baby away with the bathwater as well, because all of this is rooted in extremely problematic white supremacist capitalistic ideals that are detrimental to non-white people.
And laws and amendments that was created hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Nothing that has been updated to reflect the times that we're currently living in, for sure. And Phil, I want to throw this dart at the wall, and I know this may piss a couple people off, and I'm never ever comparing the same fight to Maya Moore's fight and what she did as far as giving up her, Olympian career, to go save someone who looks like her, to go save another black man. Honestly, but when you think about the entertainment space, right, they're jumping into this political rant, as far as helping black and brown people and who are innocent be able to be released from prison. What are your thoughts? You mentioned Maya Moore, but what are your thoughts when you see people coming from an entertainment space like Kim Kardashian to do the exact same? I had to ask. I had to ask.
I wasn't expecting. Kim K said something.
No, she didn't say nothing about this particularly,
She didn't
but
say
she
something this
has.
time.
But
So
she has come out, and has put in some work to get some people released.
and so this what I'll say, right?
And Donald
Same
Trump,
thing.
he has thrown out some pardons too for some black people to get released too.
So this is what I'll say when it comes to just the celebrity, right? We realize that we live in a world where celebrity culture matters. Taylor Swift comes out and says she's riding with Kamala Harris, and people follow.
Yeah.
We recognize that there's this idea of free thinking, right, isn't necessarily real, right? We're all influenced by something, we're influenced by someone, some more than others.
Mm-hmm.
If, and ultimately, what it boils down to is if the celebrity comes out and their views on a specific situation aligns with my own, then we gonna be for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no different than folk who like Amber Rose coming out and advocating for 45, and
Yeah.
folk are like, well, listen, I'm a rock with her, you know what I mean? Yeah, we need that because my ideals, my morals, my views are being promoted, pushed to the forefront. I think that highlights a few things. I think it highlights how problematic celebrity culture is, entertainment culture is. I also think it highlights the helplessness that people feel when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to having their voices heard. And I think it also highlights where folks saying your vote matters. I don't necessarily think that people really feel that way. I think it's more so lip service than anything else. Because if folk truly believe that their vote mattered, then they would do what? They would hold their vote hostage for something, for an outcome that benefits them, right? Instead of looking for the lesser of two evils. We see this when it comes to the uncommitted, who are mostly our Muslim folk, our Muslim brethren,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who are like, listen, now we know that the uncommitted folk are saying, listen, we are not voting for Kamala because she doesn't speak to our needs and what's happening specifically with the genocide in Palestine and now Lebanon. So we're going to take our vote and we're going to take it elsewhere. And that's why we see Jill Stein getting endorsements from Muslim coalitions. We see her in key swing states leading Kamala Harris because you have a group of folk who have mobilized and said, listen, this is what we're going to do with our vote as a result. If we had that in this Marcellus Williams situation, or when it comes to just legal situations in general, or things that we really care about,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we held our vote and said, listen, you need to speak to us or you won't get it, then what could the potential outcomes be?
That's
There's
right.
no accountability when you say, I'm voting for you because you an AKA. I'm voting for you because you're because you're white, which is real. You can't hold anybody accountable
But that's where we are right
when
now,
it
though,
goes to that
Phil.
point.
I feel like that's where we are right now, and I feel like we've been there for the past three elections. We went from 2016 with 45 and Hillary, we went 2020 Biden and 45, and now we back three times with Harris in 45. So I feel like we're just in that stage of where we are here in America. As far as being exposed for who we truly are, greed, power, and that's what it's really about when it comes down to getting into this presidential seat, right? Because the people who have been running for president has not been running for the American people. They want to, AKA, make America better again in a way in which it makes them and their 1% better. When you think about even Harris running for this next seat, a lot of people feel like she's running because she feels like she wants to be the face of America as the first Black woman president. You know what I mean? And I feel like that is something, like you said, as far as lip service, that people are running with. But that's where we are. America is built on entertainment, right? Well, America is built on the backs of Black folks, but entertainment goes
Facts.
along with that, right? And with that being said, we're entertaining the American people as well with this election and with our politics and our politics that we're continuously putting out for the average voter. But I do kind of want to push back though, Phil. I feel like there's a lot of people who do feel like their vote does count. I feel like if a lot of people feel like though their votes do matter and their vote is their voice. You feel me? specifically on a local level. I mean, a local level when it comes to local elections. On a federal level, yes, I'm with you, brother, right there. You know, the less than two evils is a thing, right? But on a local level, I feel like we have been able to make strides in a lot of urban cities while utilizing our vote and putting the right people in position. And a lot of new voices, and a lot of young voices, and a lot of people who look like you and me as far as being activists and loud and ready to disrupt some individuals and disrupt some systems that have been put together for so long. So I think it's going to get the wheels turning locally. I don't know about
I,
nationally, but
I
locally, I
hear
see it
you.
moving.
I'll go back to, when we talk about the top cop, right? Like that's part of how she's running. When we talk about Kamala, she's running as the top cop. It doesn't surprise me that she's silent. She's typically silent on things that matter, right?
Yeah.
Because if she comes out and she says, "Listen, there's some issues when it comes to Marcellus Williams, uh, the information that we have, and just the execution, there's some doubt there." If she comes out and says that, who is she going to offend, right? Who is going to look at her and say, yeah, well, you know what, yeah, we were going to potentially vote for you, but now you are advocating for this convicted murderer, because the legal system, what they say goes. And so any type of doubt you may offer with regards to the legitimacy of a conviction, or his pending execution or post execution, at this point is going to be looked at problematic, because they're already doing that,
I don't
right
think she
there.
was going to lose anybody, though, Phil. I think,
Say it again.
honestly, I don't think she was going to lose any or offend anybody. Honestly, I think the people that, would have been offended by her speaking was already, not voting for her in the first place. You got to remember, we're talking about Missouri. Like, we're not
and
talking
and
about
that's
Chicago, Illinois.
and that's fair, right? That's a fair point. But when we look at it just optically speaking, giving the opposition more ammo, right? Because
Hmm.
they're already coming at her for letting one migrant out of jail. I saw the commercial when I was watching Tubi, right? With letting one migrant out of jail who allegedly committed a homicide, and now they're running with that. They would do the exact same thing with that. And so instead of standing on truth and speaking truth to power, it's okay. Let me not say anything so I don't add potential fuel to the fire, to give them something else to talk about. Now she's talking about going down to the border and taking a trip down there to, to campaign and to advocate, because why? Somebody brought up something and they making her look bad in the public eye. I
Hmm.
completely agree with you. There's no such thing as an undecided voter. There's uncommitted voters, but
Yeah.
there's no such thing as an undecided voter at this point. But when we talk about just the negative imagery that's continued to be perpetuated, especially when you think you're in a great light post debate, why would I even come out and say something? Why would I say something that probably won't change the outcome? And it's a political move. The business decisions are being made.
But then by her not saying nothing, that goes back to that black vote, right? Her automatically assuming that she's going to get that black vote because she's black. That's not the case at all, right? Because going back to the conversation around like entertainment, getting involved in these conversations when we talk about, law and we talk about policies and things like that, I feel like a lot of attention didn't turn to this case until Crump got involved, right? And Crump is a lawyer, but at the same time, he's more in a space of entertainment. A lot of people start to focus in on black and brown cases when the NAACP Crump gets up and says, "Hey, I'm going to represent this person." Now people want to get more involved into the feed to figure out what's happening as far as the news and information around it. So just like you said yourself, you only known about this case for a month. Whereas though this has been going on for 2 decades, we could have been fighting for this man. You know what I mean? We could have been putting petitions out for this man, but we don't know anything about it because news is not shining light on small cases like this in red states like Missouri, right? But my question I wanted to ask you, because I know we got other topics to get into, right? Speaking of like being able to make decisions, not Donald Trump, my apologies. Joe Biden is in his last days, right? We're right under, I would say, 80 something days until November 5th, right? Do you think he should have spoke up, right? Just like Barack Obama went out, he did tons of pardons 45 went out and he did tons of pardons. Do you think Joe Biden could actually help this man and gave him pardons in his last days?
Well,
And this is a
I don't.
personal. This is a personal opinion, of course.
Yeah, and when it comes to pardons, I don't necessarily know if I've ever seen somebody pardoned for like homicide or who've
Okay.
been alleged to commit homicides. We've seen pardons for non-violent offenders, but I rarely, from, and again, this speaking anecdotally without facts, uh, rarely do I think there's ever been like a pardon for a homicide. We've seen the state of Missouri, they pardoned those two white folk who pointed guns at protesters, right? We've seen that take place by the governor, not from a
Federal.
federal level. Same thing in Texas. We they released the individual who killed a protester. He was pardoned and released from jail after serving a little bit of time, but not from a federal level. I don't I don't expect much from these people. I don't put my hope and faith in President Biden to do what's right on behalf of the people, because we're not who he answers to. We're not who Kamala or 45 answer to. They answer to their corporate interests first and foremost. That's what matters. That's what keeps them elected, right? That's what keeps them going forward. Because if you don't answer to them and you try to answer to humanity and you try to answer to people, then you'll find yourself like Corey Bush. You'll find yourself like Jamal Bowman, where you had APAC, the Jewish organization, come out and say, you know what? Listen, we're going to throw $3 million. We're going to throw $7 million behind your primary opponent, who's
Yeah.
also a Democrat, but who speaks to the talking points that we want. We want pro-Israel people in office. We can't have individuals who truly care about the people. And this is where I say, like, to your point where you say, getting folk who may be activists, who truly care about the people, it only lasts but for so long. That's
Yeah.
like the individual who goes into the police department who says, "Listen, I want to change, make change from within." I don't know any system that's been changed from within. Right? Because what will happen is you either get burned out and you realize, listen, I can't do this ish anymore. I'm out of here. Or you fall victim to the ideals of the system that you're in. Now and we can look most recently to, again, this was around like October, November, the resolution in Philly City Council, as we transition to talking more about things that's happening locally. We look at Philly City Council, who unanimously voted to to um to this resolution that says Israel has a right to defend itself, right? Despite what was the genocide that had already started taking place. This is people like Kendra Brooks, who I believe is often on the good side,
Hmm.
right? Jamie Gaultier, who, what I mean, I believe is often on the good side of things. I got my beef with Kenyatta Johnson, you know what I'm saying, for a few things, right? Who the one who proposed the bill, you know what I'm saying? And so we talk, but it was unanimously passed.
Yeah.
Why? Because when you're in here, you have to make business decisions because people's livelihoods are attached um to how they express their humanity. Their
We're also a
livelihoods.
sanctuary city. We're also a sanctuary city, so it kind of would look kind of fraud if they did not unanimously decide on that decision.
What, but with that being said, like somebody could have said, and this is why it took so long. And folk, you pro-Palestinian protesters, like, can you say ceasefire? And it's
Hmm.
just, well, you know what? It was going on over there is messed up. You know what I mean? People shouldn't die, but now folk are coming around and say ceasefire because the powers that be, who they answer to at the top, now they're saying ceasefire. So once it comes down to the top, it's just like, all right, now we have permission to say
Yeah,
it. And
yeah,
that just
yeah.
goes to the point of when we talk about true change, true systemic change, who gonna stand on their own too? Why? Because you risk not winning re-election for city council. You run the risk of not winning for state representative. So you have to the company line. You have to be out there smiling with Josh Shapiro, who's signing artillery here in Pennsylvania that's going to kill poor people within the Ukraine-Russian war. You got to come out and say, well, he means well, he's a good guy. Or Fetterman, who continues to make jokes about pagers blowing up and Palestinians being killed, who pulled the gun on a black man, right? Who he thought was who he allegedly thought was had committed a robbery in some capacity. And you got these black state officials coming out and saying, well, you know what? He's a good guy, right? Because why? Your livelihood depends on it. So I'm not but it's and that's why I think when we talk about this idea of voters and power and or a lack thereof from my perspective, and we talk about what's happening in local government where individuals don't necessarily have as much power as they may think.
Yeah, and speaking of pushback, right, from the inside, switching into local news and information right now, when it comes down to what's happening in the city of Philadelphia, our Madam Mayor, the 100th mayor, the very first Black woman of Philadelphia, she came out. She did about a good 3 minute
Wait,
speech.
we got. Matter of fact, let me set it up for him. We're gonna set it up for him right here because I'm ready.
Oh
I
man, when
am
I seen
proud to
that was
share
crazy.
that I have made my decision and an agreement has been reached that will ensure that our Sixers are staying home. Yes, you heard me correctly. My administration has reached an agreement with the Philadelphia 76ers for an arena in Center City, and I will be transmitting the related legislative package to our City Council of Philadelphia for its consideration where it must be approved.
I'm so glad it stopped right there because I was getting irritated. I'll let you go. You do your thing.
Oh man, but yeah, I just think that as we switch to local news, like I was about to say, hearing that, seeing the production that went behind that, I thought was definitely crazy. Shout out to her team. They're gonna make sure the Madam Mayor sitting up good and looking good at all times. But yeah, after that production was dropped last week, simply her coming on and saying that she's balls deep in it. She's 100% with it. As far as keeping the 76ers in the city of Philadelphia, moving the arena into Center City, downtown in the Chinatown area, and then also promising the people of Chinatown that she has something for them at the same time, that she's not going to forget about them, even though she's displacing them after hundreds and hundreds of years. But I think, or I should say decades and decades, I think that just the pushback in general, just to go back to your point, as far as having pushback within the system. So shout out to council members Nick O'Rule, Kendra Brooks, you mentioned her earlier, and Jeffrey Young Jr., who's actually opposing the project based on what the people of their district is saying. And I think that's what it's all about. If the people are saying they don't want this, and you are saying that you are for the people and about the people, and you're still worried about your legacy and how it looks for you as the first Black woman mayor, and then the 100th woman mayor. I think that just the 100th mayor in general, I think that honestly feel like this is going to completely start an uproar in the city of Philadelphia. We have already seen some pushbacks with these car meetups that we had over the weekend, right? Shows you that you're going to put this big camaraderie downtown in Center City and think that it's not going to create chaos. No, it's going to create just as much chaos as it did right in front of your city hall on Saturday. So I think that she needs, and city council needs to really rethink how they're going to roll out this project. And it's not about money. The people of the city of Philadelphia is not thinking about it. And I do understand that it's going to create jobs, but what does these jobs look like, and how is it actually going to really affect the people who work downtown? So I think it's really going to be a money move for more businesses versus the people. But let me hear what you got to say before I really yeah.
Well, we know that when we talk about jobs, well, first to this initial point about listening to the people, that's also a part of government,
Yeah.
right? The idea of government is the people don't really know what they want. Right. That's a part of the mindset that government officials have, even though they may be representing a specific sect, right? Whether on a local level or a federal level. Now we're talking about the entirety of everybody, right?
Hmm.
How can so, and we have to look at the function of the city, the progress of the city. When we look at Philadelphia, Philadelphia is trying to turn itself into this I'm about to say this green space, this green white space. That's what it's trying to turn itself into. So this where you see the installation of flowers and trees and all of this, because who are they trying to attract here? They're trying to attract wealthy white folk to come here to spend their money. That's why they have all these everything regarding entertainment, and that's why we see such a big boost in the monies and fundings that the entertainment sector is receiving. That's why we see things like this pass. It's to say that, hey, you know what, this is for your own good, right?
Hmm.
You might not see it here, but this is much better for you. This will change the plight of the city. And they have to juggle both, right? They have to juggle pushing the city forward, whatever that means, as well as the supposed interest of their specific voting base. So they're navigating both. When it comes to this idea of jobs, yes, you're going to see temporary construction jobs. Who is it going to go to? Right? A lot of these we know we know that a lot of this is about who you know. We know that and I would like to know what percentage of these construction jobs will go to companies that's headed by black and brown folk.
Hmm.
Whenever I drive, and they doing a lot of, because they've been doing construction on 76 and 95 for eternity. Whenever I drive past anywhere, I just see white folk out there. Right? We know that they make up a large majority of the construction and the union jobs here in the city. So we're talking about jobs in that front.
Well, she's
Now,
supposed to be giving them to, as far as the contracts, it was said that she was supposed to be giving them to more black contractors and black developers. That's what I was heard. That's what I was told.
but ain't that
Now,
what we always hear? Ain't that something they always say? Listen, we're gonna give it to y'all Negroes. I
I'm
mean,
just
we going
saying, like that was part of the actual plan when because they had many sit downs with the Black Caucus here in Philadelphia, so that was supposed to be part of the plan. And then also the Asian community was supposed to be a part of this plight as well, as far as being able to reap some benefits from what's happening over at the stadium or what's happening with the stadium if it was to come to the city of Philadelphia. But there's also a lot that was in the report that dropped like 3 weeks ago that was conflicting evidence and information based on what was said in the actual report that was sent out to the public. So I think based on what was given verbally and what was talked about in a lot of these meetings, versed on what was put in that report is definitely conflicting. And that's why she said at the end of that production that she put out there the other day was that she's going to have multiple town halls around the city and in every part of the city to really talk about these issues.
that's
So,
but that goes to the point
and
of,
she's late. She didn't do what she said she was going to do. She said it was going to be at the top of this week, and it didn't happen. It's already Wednesday, and we were looking out for it on Monday as far as her statements and how
yeah.
these town halls are going to roll out. So when she said that she was going to do what she was going to do last week, she did not do it this week. But go ahead, Phil. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but this goes to the point, right? Like, we're doing town halls after I done said we doing this.
Hmm.
So what's the point? All the
Mm,
air is out of the balloon at this point.
mm.
Because you've already said that we're doing this, and I'm sending this to city council, and we recognize that, um who are these folk in allegiance with? If you go against the mayor, how long are you going to last?
Mhm.
Especially then just where the identity aspect gets into it, right? If you go against the first black woman mayor in the city, how long will you last? It's easy with Kenny. Right? It's easy with Kenny because it was some things that's taking place, so you could continuously push back against him. Right? He was a lame duck. So at the end of his term, it was just like, yeah, so we can do whatever we want over here. Right? We really don't care. But now this is about relationships
Mm.
and maintaining those relationships. If you want to go from city council to now you want to be a state rep, if you want to go, try to go higher, whose support are you going to need? You're going to need the black mayor, right? And vice versa. And so this relationship this that results in professional and political aspirations and having those push forward is vital. But at this point, it's just like, no, we don't need to hear from y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Because are we going to listen to y'all anyway? Because we've already had these town halls, we've already had the protests, we've already had independent folk come out and say with hard data that says, listen, this isn't going to do what you think it's going to do. We know historically, whenever a stadium and arena is built in a city, it does nothing to push that city forward. It does absolutely nothing. For example, there was in you had, let's see, you had Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. Now that came from public funds, right? But that caused the increase in local taxes,
Mm-hmm.
just local city taxes,
But
local taxes for individuals. Even though
Indianapolis is a very poor city, though, so they
and
needed that.
but when we talk about the things that are how things are influenced, like yes, this is coming out of supposedly private funding,
Mm-hmm.
some billions of dollars to build this arena, but folk are still going to be impacted by it. They're going to find out a way to make folk pay for it on the back end. So when we look at um it was a study from probably like the mid 2000s, right? It said that the average annual employment from a stadium is only around 600 jobs, and most of them are part-time and low-wage, low-skilled jobs.
Yeah.
But we gave the niggas jobs. That's all that's going to be said. That's what's going to be highlighted,
And one
right?
right now too, Phil. I don't want to cut you off, but one right now too, just to put some context in it. Right now, we're actually having a stadium worker strike currently going on right now in the city of Philadelphia,
At,
like as
at
we're
Airmark.
speaking. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly, at Airmark. And they're protesting the Wells Fargo, as we're talking about. They're protesting Wells Fargo where the Flyers play. And they're also protesting the Phillies, where the Philadelphia Phillies play as well. So as we're talking about jobs, and we talk about these type of jobs where jobs where it's created around an arena and a stadium, and workers already currently in the city don't feel like they're being respected and they're getting their just due already. So what is the difference if it moves to center city? So I just wanted to put that out there.
No, exactly, right? Because they recognize they can't make a living, they can't pay their rent, they can't pay their mortgage based off of what they're being paid.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at
Audi's is doing a better job at that. Audi's is giving $23 away this winter. You know what I'm saying? If you're looking for a job, go to Audis.com and go get you a part-time job.
yeah, but at what expense though, right? Like you got to work two jobs with $23 an hour ain't enough to sustain folk at this
Mm-hmm.
stage of the game. You know,
At a
when we
grocery
talk
store,
about
you can't fight over it though, Phil. That's a grocery store. You gotta take it how it comes. Come on, man.
but that's what capitalism is. You know what I mean? Like you don't
That's true.
control the means of production. You just got to sell your labor, and you selling your labor at a fraction of what it's worth.
That's real.
But
That's
that's what
real.
these people bank on. Like if they paying them, like nobody questions the fact that they have some billions of dollars to fund this on their own. If they're funding the arena for billions of dollars, what this means is they're going to make at least tenfold of what they're investing in this.
That's why they're willing to put their money up front.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But even to go to a most recent stadium that was built, Nationals Park in Washington, D.C., a 2019 study found that 30% of businesses near the stadium closed
Mm-hmm.
due to rising rents and competition from large developments that catered to wealthier patrons.
And
So
I can
what's going
speak
to
to that
happen?
from I can speak from that from personal experience. In Southwest Washington D.C., they built that national stadium. They also built the soccer stadium over there as well. And all it did was congest the city. I mean, you can't even get through that part of the city. Traffic is built up. The infrastructure that was created around the actual stadiums where it was not meant to actually, happen at all. Like Washington D.C. is extremely small. It's not even a city; it's a district. So the fact that they put two stadiums in one section of the city was crazy. When I tell you it's jam packed, it's jam packed. When you talk about the inflation that went up, you were talking about Southwest and Southeast Washington D.C., which was the most impoverished area in the Washington D.C. area. I mean, in the district in general. So when it comes down to putting those businesses there, no one could afford even a burger going to these stadiums. No one can even afford parking going to these stadiums. And it's rat infested. It's so many rodents and domestic animals out there surrounding these these stadiums and these restaurants because it was so how would you say, dissipated. No one was there at all. Like it was just like a desert city waiting to be rebuilt. Don't get me wrong, and it needed to be rebuilt, but at the same time, once you started to knock down all those factories and knock down all those old buildings, all of those domestic animals needed a new place to live, and they're living right on the streets, right next to these 5-star, aka 5-star restaurants, next to these aka 5-star hotels, next to these high-priced condos in the district. So Phil, when you talk about that, I've known that firsthand to be nothing but disruption, complete chaos for long-term residents in the district.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean, I guess that keeps sanitation in business, I guess. I don't you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to find a rainbow in the midst of
Mm-mm.
this
Southwest Philadelphia is
calamity.
full of just full of domesticated animals. I mean, so many. And I thought Philadelphia was, and I'm not even trying to make this about rodents, but I thought Philadelphia was pretty bad. But when you go to DC, you go to that Southwest area around those stadiums, you'll see it for yourself for sure.
Well, I just
It's
saw
neck to neck to New York City.
yeah, it just came across my timeline on one of them apps that we all probably shouldn't be on if we care about our well-being. It just came it said that Philadelphia has the third most rat infestation in the country.
Yeah,
You
man.
know what I'm saying? So, especially in like South Philly, they like, yo, what's up, baby? How y'all feeling? All right, yo, y'all have a good day at school. All right, we gonna keep the party going. But yeah, and also they talk about keeping these local businesses thriving. What's going to happen? Is it going to be some type of rent control?
Yeah.
Right? Because what's going to happen? These builders, these developers are going to come in. They're going to take over these buildings. They're going to buy out the current owners of these buildings. They're going to develop it. That's what they do. They're going to gentrify these areas. This area down there. And then if I'm going down there, I know this, firsthand. You've been to sporting events. If I know I'm going to the Wells Fargo where they are now to watch a Sixers game, I am not spending money on eating anywhere else except inside that place. Unless
Yeah.
I try to get me a good meal at home so I don't have to pay anything. But if you're going down there, you're not at low, let me go to this nice fancy restaurant. No, I'm gonna spend my money inside there. So I'm not going to go to the local Asian restaurant, right? That probably has better pricing because I want to just do everything in here because I'm gonna be in here for 3 to 4 hours. So I'm
Well,
trying to save my money because if I want some chicken and peas, I know inside for some cold fries and 3 chicken fingers, that's gonna cost me $23. Right. So again, how does this how does this sustain these Asian businesses and these non-Asian businesses that are in that location? It's going to rent prices are going to go up because
mhm.
why? I live near the stadium, right? I live near where it's happening, where it's hustling and bustling. I can speak to that where just the rising cost for housing. I know what I pay for my mortgage right now. When I got my house 15 years ago, I paid 3 figures. I was like, all right, let me look around and see how much the houses around my area going for. They're going for, when we talk about monthly mortgage, we talking about $1,700, $1,800 a month.
Mhm.
And then when we start looking at the county, and this is in, even though they turn this into little Latin America around here, shout out to my homies, you know what I'm saying? But when we start to look even like getting closer into the city, we see the thousands that it's costing to rent places, to own places. And this is only going to get worse, right? So I don't know. I'm not. Maybe you're more hopeful than
No,
I am when it
and I
comes to
wanted
this.
to just also add some context to it too, Phil. Like I think that with this move, also particularly, it's focused in on a new generation and a new demographic of folks, right? So it's not necessarily, I would say it's not necessarily being mapped out for the average Philadelphia. It's not necessarily being mapped out for, you know, the Philadelphia, who's a long-term 76ers fan, is really being mapped out for the gentrifier. It's being mapped out for that young business professional. Is being mapped out for that college student who lives right there in University City, which can go 2 stops to 15th Street and, you know, be right there in the mecca of the city of Philadelphia. So I really think that all of these plans are for the new age of Philadelphia, not the long-term Philadelphia resident. So when you think about the businesses and the type of restaurants and things that they're going to put down there, it's really going to be like the Instagrammable kind of
Yeah.
restaurants and the
Yeah.
bars and restaurants that are, you know, really catering to people who are influential to their generation, you know, so people can want to be eager to go down there to those new places. And then you also think about just the camaraderie that Philadelphia has when it comes down to great food, right? We love a good cheesesteak. We love to talk about these things. So I think they're going to um, implement new business ideas and new strategies strategically to get to that black and brown dollar. You know, that black and brown dollar, it's going to spin, 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 right? We're the largest, we have the largest spending power as Americans, right? We're going to spend. So with that being said, it's like, how can we make sure that even though we're creating more jobs for black and brown people, we're also bringing them in to be able to spend more money, and then also get that young business professional dollar at the same time. And when you think about the people who will even be living down there next to that stadium, it's going to be people who can afford it, right? It's going to be people who have the jobs down there in that downtown area around City Hall and things like that. And then to put more context with it, as far as the Asian businesses and the Asian restaurants that are currently in Chinatown, you're absolutely correct. Right now, currently, they have to be the ones to. If you go to Chinatown right now, majority of the restaurants that I believe that are successful, I believe that are successful right now, is because it stays open past midnight. A lot of restaurants in Chinatown offer late night hours, offer late night meals, offer late night snacks where you can come in and you can actually get food in a reasonable time after you finish a basketball game or a sporting event. So I think that there is some type of benefit to keeping some of the restaurants, but I feel like a lot of them are going to be displaced. But I feel like some of them are going to be able to stay in where they are because of what they do offer the Philadelphia community. And I've seen people in Chinatown, you know, leaving a club going to like, yo, we're going to such and such J Harbor, woo woo, so we can get, you know, the broccoli and the string beans at 3 o'clock in the morning, that fried rice, the chicken wings, all that good stuff at 5 o'clock in the morning. And it's something that Chinatown actually offers here in the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you. You know, I hear you, and you know, all you can do is just wish these folk the best, right?
Hmm.
We know as a community, and as you know, not the stereotype, but there is like a strong fabric and understanding how they're going to show up in situations like this. So if Chinatown wasn't maintained in Center City, then it's going to happen somewhere else. I live in the Bustleton Northeast area, and the age just the Asian contingency is increasing. All of the properties are being bought up by a lot of Asian folk, and then being and this is again, this goes to where when you sit and you're watching and you're observing, you really start to see um you know how all of this intersects. You're starting to see them buying up a lot of the homes.
Yeah.
The homes are being sectionated. The further northeast, if you look at the map for Section 8, the most money that you get is like the northeast and the greater northeast, right? You start to see 17, 18, $1,900 a month that is coming from the city slash state, right? So now this is how we push folk out, and this is how we gain power as a community. There's a real estate office down the street, in the Asian one. It's like the whole block is now at this point is Asian owned businesses on Bustleton Avenue, but they have all the houses. I've never seen anything like this at a real estate office. Normally you got to go in, you got to know an agent, you got to go through it for you. They have them printed out on the window, and at any given moment you'll see 5 people just sitting there standing looking.
Mm-hmm.
right? And seeing what the purchase. Now, a lot of them are actually in New York. They're coming from New York and purchasing the homes that are here, right? So as far as just their viability as a community, I think that'll continue, even if they are displaced, as Philadelphia tries to position itself as this entertainment space of the world. It started with like the Spruce Harbors and all of this to make it attractive for folk to come and tourists to
Yeah.
come. But what does that mean for the city? Does that mean that we see now that they're now forcing the city to, or they're forcing um what's his name, Superintendent Wallington, now he has to assess the buildings for their viability, which means
Mm-hmm.
schools are going to close. So we're going to have schools closing. There's still asbestos in schools. How is this all interrelated? Is the taxes, the property taxes that they're going to have to spend to in that area, is that going to go back to the schools at some point where schools could actually stay open when it's 90 degrees out?
But it also is going to make money for our public transportation, and I think that that's something that it was also in the budget that I think a lot of people are talking about is the fact that as far as public safety and public health, it would actually put more money to that particular budget, right? Because SEPTA will be involved in these plans, of course, so people will be able to commute to and from the new arena. And by SEPTA being involved for people to be able to commute to and from the arena, they're actually offering free SEPTA the day of, so people can actually get on public transportation versus driving their private vehicles, because it was deemed in the actual report that we don't have enough parking space, or we don't have enough public spaces for people to be able to park their cars, or we don't have enough private parking lots as far as people to be able to pay for parking when they get there, because this particular arena won't be able to have a garage attached to it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a lot of public health measures that go along with this situation as well. And in her spiel last week on social media, which I wanted to ask you about that too. But quickly, in her spiel on social media, she made it very evident that she wanted to revive Market Street, right? She wanted to revive from Market Street all the way down to City Hall. And I think that with her position on being a greener, cleaner Philadelphia, I think she's going to put more money, or I believe the city is supposed to be putting more money into that budget of the Office of Sustainability with this particular contract as well. But I wanted to ask you, we live in a age right now where most of our elected officials are turning to social media in order to be heard. Most of our elected officials are going directly to social channels so they can, one, announce public decisions, two, announce their candidacy, whatever it may be, or three, just to really get off a message to tell the people of how they're doing things from their particular office. So when you see more local officials going to social media to do that versus going to people like me and you who fight for these particular stories as reporters, journalists, and just media outlets in general. They could have went to Fox, they could have went to ABC, they could have went downtown to see Mark. They decided to do it on Instagram, like
I
Instagram,
think is
like literally Instagram. Like, what's your thoughts on her making this public decision, this public announcement, where it's really going to change the entire city, and she decided to go on Instagram? She could have had an entire press conference about something like this, but she decided to go on Instagram.
Yeah, I think optics matters, right? And so if you don't want anything to be misconstrued, I think it's definitely strategic, where it's like I'm speaking directly to the people.
Hmm.
When we have the journalists who are reporting, we have the press conferences. Yes, the people can attend, but they'll see the replays. But it's something about, this phone, you reach more people. Number two, I just saw something that came across my desk where it said that individuals are going to TikTok for their news, um, and less Facebook. When it used to be the reverse. Facebook used to be the news capital of the world if you needed
Yeah, that's
information, that
true.
and Twitter. But now more people are going to TikTok for their news. And this is what happens, where it's the new thing that's in town. It's new media. So I'm sure when they were when they had carrier pigeons sending messages to folk, somebody was just like, yo, let's mail this. Let's, you know what I mean? So then they started mailing. And then you had somebody who was just like, yo, let's get this telephone thing popping. Alexander Graham Bell, allegedly, because we know they be stealing ideas and shit. Like, yo, let's get this telephone popping. So now we're sharing information via telephone, and then it's newspapers, and then it's email. It's just like, oh, what is this email? Now they call, yo, listen, we ain't doing that in snail mail. Don't send me nothing email. DM it to me, right? So we've seen this progression in just how we share, how information is shared. And if you want to have more of a direct interaction with people, with the community who you're supposed to represent, then yeah, it makes complete sense that you go to the TikToks, the Instagrams, still the Facebooks, and using these mediums to push that information. But because also you're trying to get to a younger demographic who's not turning on Fox 29, who's not going on news websites. So yeah, does it make the journalist job potentially obsolete at some point? Yeah, because if I can give some information out directly to the people, then why would I bring in anybody else to convey my thoughts? Also, what this doesn't allow for is I don't have to answer any questions. All right, because if I have a journalist there, it's just like, well, why did you come to this conclusion? All right, what was it about? So when we start to ask these questions, you don't have to answer questions if you just throw a little 5-minute video out saying this is what we're going to do. I'm sending the city council. Peace out.
Yeah. But in my opinion, though, I think that it actually, even though you are trying to appeal to a different demographic, I feel like it still becomes a conversation of people who you're pandering to, right? Because millennials and Gen Z, we see right through it. It's not something that is enticing to us. It's not something that makes us say, oh, she's hip, she's cool, she's rad, she's right there with us, meeting us where we are, and sparking these conversations on social media. You know what I mean? Social media can definitely have its own monster when it comes to the results you're trying to get as far as the news and information that you're putting out there. So I think that, like you said, it was very strategic, but in the same breath, I think that if we're going to continue to treat politics like politics, we should do it in a very formal manner. And I think that, yes, times are changing. I completely agree.
No, you sounded old school. You sounded like you're still doing the WAP. You know what I mean?
I just didn't appreciate the announcement on Instagram. We've been waiting for this. This is something that's been ongoing since 2021, 2022. And you jumped on Instagram to do it. You know what I mean? Like, let's just think about the community specifically that was affected. Do they have Instagram? You know what I mean? Let's think about the businesses that are affected. Are you tagging their businesses on Instagram to let them know that they're about to be going out of business? Like, I just think that this particular message could have been done a different way. And for me, particularly as a journalist, as someone who's a reporter and wants to be able to get to, the grounds of these stories, I think she should have definitely came to someone in the city that she trusted as a reporter, she trusted as a source to get this news and information out there. And I think from there, her team could have strategically put out different clips and different postings to help push the narrative of what she decided to do on social media platforms. But to go and do an entire produced script on Instagram, I just think that's just not necessarily enticing to the everyday average millennial voter or Gen Z voter, or just the first time voter that will be coming up in the next 3 years. So I think that there's something there's something that could have been done differently in order to really release this message to the public. And all I did was read the comments for sure. I hope she went directly into the comments, because all I saw was one term Sherelle, one term Parker. That's all I seen in the comments.
Yeah. What day was this released?
Last Wednesday. We're officially 1 week away from her release. She did it last Wednesday.
Oh, she did it last Wednesday. Okay.
Last Wednesday, yeah.
Because I thought it was Friday, and we know what happens when folk release stuff on Friday. That's extremely strategic, because then it get lost in the weekend shuffle. That's why you see anything of importance like related to the people, it
Mm-hmm.
gets released on a weekend because folk are out living their lives. They're not necessarily as tuned in as expected. But also I just read that today she's going to be offering details regarding the strategy for getting the arena done.
Yeah,
So
she was
it's
supposed to do that on Monday. That's what I'm saying. That was supposed to actually drop
okay.
on Monday. So she's 2 days late. That's what I mean when I say she's late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she's supposed to show up and show out today. I mean, I'm just gonna watch to see how she navigates this. She do the gymnastics to have folk thinking like this is best for the people,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to best for the Sixers and secondarily, or maybe even primarily, best for her legacy as mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because if
And
she's the mayor to say that, listen, I brought the Sixers a new arena, that goes a long way when you're trying to be a get to that federal level of politics, and you got people behind you. If you get this done, and you got Joshua Harris, who owns the Sixers, who owns the New Jersey Devils, and who owns the Washington Commanders, which is nasty work in itself. Right, like he has no allegiance. That's why I don't expect shit from him. He has no
mm-hmm.
allegiance to the city in any capacity because he got 3 teams in different states that go against local teams,
Yeah.
right? But if you have him behind you, you good because all you got, and that's why we see what's that boy name? Amin something.
Armin Brown.
Uh, Amin Brown, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
why we seen him when he was during the Democratic primary. Like, listen, we need this here. Why? Because they lacing his pockets to do this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so if you got them on your beside you, it's just like having God,
Yeah,
right?
and then
With Jesus behind me, with Allah behind me, I should fear no man. So it's the same thing. I got these billionaires behind me. I'm good in every hood, in every boardroom.
yeah, and Mark Squilla, he has a lot of eyes and attention on him right now. He's the actual council member where the 76 arena will take place if it is approved. So he has a lot of eyes on him right now as far as what his decision may be and listening to the people of his actual district. So, Mark, if you're listening, I will encourage you to listen to the folks for sure.
Yeah. Are you going to be listening? I guess we're going to be listening on Tuesday to the vice president debate between
October
Waltz
1st.
and October. That's the first, right? Tuesday,
Yes, yes,
right?
next Tuesday,
Yeah,
October
yeah.
1st
We're
is
going.
going down.
Yeah, so we're gonna
I'm
do the
glad it's
same
not in
thing we
Philly,
did.
man. I'm glad it's not in Philly for sure, because that one was
Yeah,
gonna
because the
be
traffic was nuts. Me trying to get
yeah.
back on time. But for those of you who tune in, definitely hit the subscribe link or tune into P.O.C. What's your website, P.O.C.?
You can find more information about Revive Radio Plus Media at reviveisalive.com, and we're on all social medias, even YouTube at revive_POC.
Word. And so we're gonna be live streaming the debate. We could have folk on here. Folk was hitting me up, a few days ago. Like, listen, I watch, I like how you had like how you had these different opinions on and folk coming out because you ain't afraid to get with folk. Nah, that's what it's about. It's about
For sure.
conversation. It's about healthy pushback because we as black folk want to see us advance as a community. Will we do that with Kamala or 45? No. With that said, with that said, we will be live streaming at Phil_Roundtree on YouTube. That will be Tuesday around 8:30 p.m. We'll give you some pre-covers, some post analysis. So tune in then.
For
Until
sure.
next time.